Hi, everybody. I had a cancellation, so I'm going to see if I can fit one in. And I don't have anything super defined, but there is a concept that I struggle with, and I think a lot of people struggle with, that's adjacent to some Buddhist concepts, some Hindu concepts. The idea that everything you experience is for you, it is your responsibility, or it is for you to respond to. And people who have been abused badly, especially if abused as a child, we have a hard time with this because we all know that as children we felt terribly helpless when we were being badly treated, and that there were really bad outcomes. And we know that people get gaslit and blamed by society for things that we didn't do, and for our struggles resulting from those things that we didn't do. And so for people who come from trauma, it can be a very difficult and uncomfortable idea. And I'm slowly working my way in to an understanding of what it means that everything that I experience is an indication of my karma. Karma just simply meaning what you've built. The actions you've taken have resulted in the experiences that you have. And I follow a guru named Sadhguru who explains this much better than I do, but I was thinking about this the other day, and I wrote a note, and I thought I would talk it through and see what happens. And if it ends up being a big muddled mess, I won't post it, and if it doesn't, I will. What I wrote as I was thinking through this is that what other people do is about them. What I experience, even the results of what others do, is for me. And so what that means, people struggle with the idea that in this experience on earth, we're here to learn, and anyone who comes into our life is some kind of teacher. Even people who misuse us, abuse us, are unkind. There's some lesson for us. But I think this is a simpler way of looking at it that's maybe not a spiritual truth, but is factual, is actually a fact. And as a therapist, I can tell you it's a given that we don't have control of what other people do. And so that's where there's this big disconnect of like, how can I be responsible for what somebody, like on one hand, a therapist will tell you, well, you can't control other people, so don't even do that. You know, you're get into a situation where you feel depressed or anxious or become perfectionist, or you become controlling. You always have an agenda because you're trying to control what other people do, so you can control outcomes. That's definitely not healthy. You can't control what other people do. So then how am I responsible for, or how is this for me? Now, as I've said many times, I'm not a spiritual leader. I'm not a spiritual guide, but this is my understanding of how, basically, in a very psychological, almost scientific sense, that this is factually true whether I like it or not. And that is, people are going to do and say things. And what they do and say is deeply and heavily informed by their childhood, by their culture, by their brainwashing from their family. And I call it that, not meaning to insult raising kids, but raising kids is a process of brainwashing. Nobody knows everything. Maybe very few people know much of anything about how all of this really works and why we're really here. But we inculcate our kids, we brainwash our kids, meaning we tell them things that we don't know for sure, but it's what worked for us. And we make a big point of teaching our kids what we were taught, without actually knowing what's truly true or what's really going on. And that's it. We're inculcating our kids. It's sort of propaganda. Raising kids is a matter of bathing them in the propaganda that you sign off on, right? So people's behavior is an indication of their own childhood, the culture they were raised in, the experiences they had, and those experiences, and mostly unconscious experiences, meaning that the experience was conscious, but the decisions or the beliefs that they came up with were unconscious. When you're a child, when you have negative experiences, you don't think, you know what, because this happened, I'm going to decide to operate this way in reality. No, your nervous system and your brain just starts acting that way according to coping mechanisms, et cetera, and that'll interact with your personality and with your belief systems, and you will develop a kind of defense mechanism or a way of navigating reality that's deeply unconscious, but it's just sort of how you as a human animal do it, right? So how people behave is almost completely has very little to do with you, even when they're behaving badly, or even if they're directly acting as if their behavior is about you, right? So let's say someone is a bully or someone's really an insult. Let's maybe it's high school and someone just starts targeting you and being like, oh my God, why'd you wear that? Are you poor? Oh, I can't believe it. That must suck. Oh man, I bet you people hate you. Well, everything they're saying is calculated to make their victim think that there's something about them that is hateable. There's something about them that makes them eligible for bullying and abuse. But the truth is the bully, everything they're doing is about the bully. It's about their experiences. It's about their desire to feel powerful. It's about their desire to see somebody squirm. It is about their desire to exert pressure or to just break something out of a buried unconscious rage, or maybe they're fairly conscious of being angry. Whatever it is, it's about the bully. It's even when it is intentional and a person is drawing out things about you or things about the victim that make it look like it's about the victim, it's never about the victim. Because if someone is really being about that other person, if you really know the person in the fullness of their humanity, no one ever wants to hurt someone that they really know that way, that they feel connected to and they see the humanity of. It's not part of our makeup to do such significant damage to a human being that you can see in the fullness of their conscious humanity. So it also says about the bully that they are also disconnected from self, from their own humanity, and they're disconnected from the humanity of everybody else, because people are not capable of being that cruel when we are connected to our own humanity and connected to the humanity of others. And for some reason, the way it works in this reality, it's impossible to be connected to your own humanity and not feel and respect the humanity of others. And it's impossible to be dismissive of and cruel to other humans without being disconnected from your own humanity. It's impossible. It's a mathematical equivalency. The level of cruelty you are capable of exerting over someone else is a level of disconnection you have from your own humanity. You are living in absence of real presence. So even behavior that's targeted, that seems to tease out and seems the bully will make it look like, well, the only reason I do this is because you're like this. It's just not true. It's completely about the bully. It's the bully being about the bully. So what other people do is about other people, and we don't have control over that. But the note I wrote, and my phone's going to lock me out. Oh, for crying out loud. Now it hid the note. Where's my note? Says, what other people do is about them. What I experience, even the results of what others do, is for me. Now, I mean that with more spiritual overtones, but again, I am not a spiritual leader. There are other people much wiser who know this, actually know this at a deep level. I suspect that it's true. And I see evidence that I think that it's true, that what I experience is for me. But I can tell you logically and scientifically, whether I believe that it has a spiritual component or not, or whether I believe it's fair or not, that it is a fact that what I experience, even the results of what others do, is for me. So let's take one of the more challenging things in my own recovery from childhood trauma. There had been a lot of really disturbing behaviors directed at me, and there were a lot of negative outcomes, and I really struggled with what had been done. And I experienced a lot of anger, a lot of blaming of the people who had done those things, feeling that everything was really unfair, feeling that I was somehow hamstrung, sort of emotionally, psychologically paralyzed, experiencing a lot of trauma. Right, all of this stuff was going on. There was real cost. There was a real extended cost for what I had experienced. But what is a fact was the hardest thing for me to deal with was the realization that the people who had done it didn't seem to be bothered by the fact that they had done it. And I had spent years trying to convince myself that, that this had come out of their own torment and they were having a horrible life, or maybe they were really sad. So like, maybe, I don't know. I mean, to do something like that to a child, I have to assume that they're not having a nice life, that they feel some torment or shame or something, but they seem to be doing fine and actually seem to be very happy. I don't know. But what was difficult to really face was the realization is it didn't matter whether it was fair or not. What they had managed to create had been created inside my skin. It had been created in my brain, and it had been created in my body. And it might have said something about them, right? What they did was about them, but the experience of it was mine. And that's hard because people who have been traumatized as kids, like, we desperately want someone to tell us it was not your fault and you shouldn't feel ashamed. And that's true. It was not your fault. The shame is not yours. The guilt is not yours. When you feel shame and guilt, that's trauma stuff to be worked out. And I hope and I pray that you're able to get free of the shame and guilt. However, the struggle and the experience that resulted from actions and behaviors not initiated by you became yours. And there's no way to give them back. And no one wants to say this. I didn't want to say it. I didn't want to admit it. The experience is mine. And there's no way to give it back. You know why? Because I was born, and whether fair or unfair, things were done to me when I was very innocent, when I was very young, starting as young as 2 or 3, as far back as I can remember. And that was my life. That was my childhood. That was my life, my childhood. If we want to argue that abuse is a terrible thing and should never happen, we cannot decouple that from the fact that the person who is abused has experiences and those become their experiences. If they didn't, abuse wouldn't really matter. We could just flip a switch and go, oh, no. Those feelings and outcomes and experiences really didn't belong to you. They belong to the abuser. It's really on them. We would just flip a switch and the universe would redirect all of those difficult feelings and dump them on them. And you would suddenly, instantly feel free. But if we were able to do that, then abuse wouldn't matter. We wouldn't care. We wouldn't worry about it. There would be no child protective services, and people wouldn't tut and clutch the pearls and be like, oh my God, what a horrible thing. I wish that had never happened to you. The reason we do those things, tut tut, and I don't mean to be dismissive, but right, express sympathy, empathy, or even feel disturbed or feel horror or feel really terrible or want to cry on someone else's behalf or just want to sit with someone and say, I'll listen to you as long as I can because I can't believe what was done to you. And I wish it wasn't done to you. And I want to help you heal and I want to be with you. And I want you to know that other people are not going to treat you that way, that we respect you, that you don't deserve that. The reason people do that, and the reason that matters, and the reason that's healing is exactly because once you have had those life experiences, it's your life. And they are your experiences. If you experience something unfair, you've had an experience of unfairness. If you experience injustice, you've had an experience of injustice. If your life has been living in terror and your life was almost taken from you and you had to fight desperately for 20 years of your life to keep your life, and that's all you did, and you didn't get any joy, and you didn't go to an amusement park, and you didn't get your first kiss, and you didn't go to high school graduate, like, it's your life. It's still your life. And so, right, what other people do is about them. What I experience, even the results of what others do, is for me. I don't mean it's my fault. I don't mean, now I am saying this with some overtones that I do believe, I do have a belief that I'm not explaining to you that I think falls in line with Buddhism, Hinduism, falls in, that I've learned so much from trauma and from being a therapist and watching people suffer and seeing really beautiful, profound awareness come out of that suffering. I can't sign off on suffering. It disturbs me. I hate it. But I do have a belief that maybe things happen for me. It was given to me for me to learn something unalterably beautiful. But because I'm not a spiritual leader, I'm not making that argument. That's for me. That's my belief. That's my spiritual pursuit. I would never in a million years take someone abused or sexually assaulted and try to convince them, well, you really need to see this was for you. And now, like, no way. Don't be that person. I see that person on, I follow a guy who does really, really beautiful work. He does trauma breath work, and on his Instagram, there's lots of dialogue. He does videos explaining to people, who have had chronically toxic parents and advocating for them when they have to cut them off and advocating for them when people don't understand and blame them and be like, how could you do that? It's your only mother. Like, and he's really beautiful and he has a deep understanding. And every once in a while, as people are commiserating with one another in the comments, saying, I had the same thing, and other people are saying, I'm really sorry, I hope you get to heal, you should do Josh's breath work, et cetera, somebody will pipe up, right? Someone who's been on the more spiritual, who will be like, well, you have to understand that this experience was given you, or even that you chose this life, you chose this incarnation, blah, blah, blah. And a bunch of people on the on the comment thread will be like, hey, dude, you're in the wrong place. Get the fuck out of here. Nobody here is trying to hear that. I'm not that person. I am not coming to you going, if I have some suspicion and if I live my life that way and if that's what helps me and if I really do think that's true, that's my business. I will never come to you and be like, oh, I think your experiences were given to you, however painful they were, to wake you up to a greater awareness and that you will become this gift to the human, like, then that's not me. I'm not doing that. I'm a trauma therapist. I see way too much pain. I would just like to stay humble and just be like, yeah, no. But what I am telling you, this I am asserting for sure. For better or for worse, it's your life and they are your experiences. It's your life and they are your experiences. My childhood was my childhood, and it was my life, and they were my experiences. And what I experienced was for me. Whether it should be for me, it should not be for me, like, it's irrelevant. They're mine. There's nothing I can do about that. Nothing. They are my experiences. Right? And we beg the question, and we create like a cognitive disconnect, or we create this logical contradiction when we do what I did for many years, which was I meditated and went to therapy, and I was working my ass off. I was working furiously, but the problem is underneath it all, I was working to make it not true. I wanted to heal so deeply and so powerfully and become so functional, even above average functional, to in a way make it as if it had never happened. I wanted my life to look like it had never happened. Learned a lot of really valuable stuff. I learned a lot of stuff and tested a lot of stuff that has become very valuable that I can offer my clients. But nothing erased the fact that that was and is my childhood, and those were and are my experiences. They're for me. Nothing I ever said or did erased that it was my childhood and those were my experiences. I experienced them. I struggled with them. I still struggle with them sometimes. And so my assertion, again, is not to be that person who makes some spiritual argument that you chose this life, blah, blah, blah. That is way above my pay grade. If that's your thing, go follow some guru or some spiritual leader. That's not me. What I'm saying is, absolutely, logically, scientifically, absolute logic and reason tell you what other people do is completely about them. What you experience, even the results of what other people do, is for you. Whether it's fair or not, it's yours and it's your life. And as someone who spent easily a decade and a half sprinting as hard as I can, yes, trying to heal, yes, trying to face it, but I was trying to face it to make it no longer, to almost make it as if it had not happened. I can tell you true healing did not come until I went, it did happen. And it fucked me up, and I paid an enormous price, and that was my life. I can't get my childhood back. I can't get my teens, 20s, and 30s back. And it wasn't all horrible. I had some amazing, beautiful experiences with some amazing, beautiful people, but a lot of it was horrible. But it was mine. It was mine. That doesn't mean I deserved what happened. That doesn't mean it was my fault. That doesn't mean anyone's blaming me. That doesn't mean that those people are not responsible for what they did. That doesn't mean that the people who stood by and let it happen aren't responsible for standing by and letting it happen to a child. But it was my experience. I was that child. I cannot argue the importance of and the value and the beauty of a child and how horrible it is to do bad things to a child without also admitting that it happens to the child. And then the child pays the price of those experiences, and those are that child's experiences. The experiences belong to that child, no matter how unfair that is. And I think society does tons of spiritual bypassing, and society goes into denial, and we really want to believe that there's some magic therapist or some pharma psychotropic drug, there's some SSRI, there's some pill that you can take that a child has been terribly abused can magically operate as if they were not abused, and that it's once they're 20 it's okay, or once they're 30 it's okay. But that's not true. The only way those people get okay is by dealing with the cost of what happened to them and just owning they're my experiences. They're mine. Nobody can pay the price but me. That's not fair, but nobody can pay the price but me. I can pay the price. The people who did it can't pay the price because they were my experiences happening in my life, to my life and my body and my brain. So unless I'm like, hey, God, can we do a reset? Just erase this, erase me, and start over. It's my experience. Those are my experiences. And I have a choice. I can become bigger than my pain. I can become bigger than my experiences. I can become wiser from my experiences. Or I can spend my life trying to erase what happened and insisting and trying to make abusers admit what they did or make abusers pay the price. Abusers can't pay the price. This is the horror of this kind of thing, right? I think to a certain extent, this is reflective of the relationship of Black people in America and white society. It's like white society needs to take responsibility for what we did. And part of taking responsibility is going like, you can't erase what it costs. Generations upon generations of people to rape, use, abuse, deny education, deny health, to deny the right to procreate with whom they choose, deny the right to raise their own kids, deny the right to not be whipped half the, like, you can't fix that. Those experiences were forced upon those humans, and they became their experiences. And then white society is like, well, let's just pretend it didn't happen. No. This doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't go anywhere. There's nothing you can do. We did it. And now we have to watch the population who suffered it, suffer it. And when they come and say, we're suffering this thing, all we can do is go, we know we gave that to you and you didn't deserve it. We know we gave that to you and that was about us. That behavior was about us. And now we have to watch someone pay a price that we imposed on them because we forced it into their experience and we made it their life. Anytime you abuse someone else, you are handing them a problem to solve that you didn't have the balls to solve yourself. You had some problem. You had some serious moral weakness or failing or misgiving. You were morally twisted, or you were weak, or you were ignorant or confused, and you dumped an experience on someone else that was convenient for you, and now that can never be taken back. You can always only say, I'm sorry, I was the one who was wrong. You didn't deserve that. And that has enormous power. That has enormous power. But it becomes the experience of the abused. It becomes it's part of their life. It's part of their experience. Every time you hurt someone or abuse someone, that is part of their life and part of their experience, and you can't remove it. You can only own, hey, that was about me. You didn't deserve that. And that's enormously healing if you mean it genuinely. So we come back to what other people do is about them. What I experience inside my skin and in my head and in my mind is for me. Think of it as emotional debt. People who abuse children hand a human being an enormous emotional debt. You are going to pay that debt, whether you like it or not. You're going to pay that debt. And you can either go, okay, I'm going to pay that debt. It's my life now, and it's my experience now. I'm going to go to work and pay that debt. Or you get really angry and you try to dissociate and detach yourself from what you experience, which results in separation from self, which results in addiction, trauma, PTSD, depression, anxiety, rage, ending up in jail, having horrible relationships, not being able to give love, not being able to feel love. When we abuse someone for long periods of time, we tempt them into separation from self. If they give in and go, I refuse to own this experience and I refuse to pay the price, it was not fair, I didn't do this, and they detach, the only way they can do that, because it is their life, and they are the one who experienced it. The only way they can go, oh, I don't have to deal with this, is to separate from self. And then that results in all the things I listed: depression, anxiety, PTSD, addiction, rage, inability to love, inability to feel loved. Once that happens, the only choice you have is to pay the debt, because it is my life. It is my experience, whether I deserved it or not. And I will come back to the line in the movie Unforgiven, Clint Eastwood's character. It's one of my favorite lines ever. Ever. Because humans are always sort of in a childlike state, going on about what's fair and what's not fair, and I didn't deserve that, and they didn't deserve, yeah, okay. So there's a scene where there's a sheriff who is a sheriff, a law-abiding man, but he's also a murderous asshole, who beat Clint Eastwood's character's friend to death. And Clint Eastwood is pushed too far, and he's sitting in a bar, and the sheriff comes in and messes with him, and Clint Eastwood, with all these guns aligned against him, does what Clint Eastwood's characters do, and he just blows all of them away. And the sheriff ends up on his back, sort of like half injured, take a shot to the ribs or something, and Clint Eastwood stands over him with a double-barrel shotgun to the face. And the sheriff says, I don't deserve this, to die like this. And you can see the anger and the set. He's a man. In the end, he's a man. He looks him in the eyes, but he still has that little bit of this is not fair. I don't deserve this, to die like this. And Clint Eastwood says, deserve's got nothing to do with it. Okay, that's Hollywood. But a frickin' men to that about everything in this life. Deserve's got nothing to do with any of it. None of it. Did I pay an enormous price for what I experienced? Yeah. There was no choice. None. I couldn't go, well, other people didn't go through that and they don't understand. And, what if they, yeah, I could spend my time doing that, but it was my life and my experience. The experiences became part of the world inside my skin and inside my brain. And I could choose to learn from it and become bigger and better and stronger and deeper, to reach for what was beautiful in the face of what was ugly. Or I could lose myself to rage, dissociation, PTSD, terror, anxiety, night terrors, bad dreams, the inability to love, the inability to feel loved. That's the core. If you separate from self, you lose the ability to love and you lose the ability to be loved. And in the end, that's the only thing any of us want. That's what it's all about. If you want a spiritual statement, that is what it is all about. The ability to love and the ability to be loved is what it's all about. Deserve's got nothing to do with it. It became your experience. It became your life. Those experiences were handed to you. It had nothing to do with you. It had everything to do with the people who did it. But the experiences became yours and your life. And there's nowhere to go with that. You can either separate from self and experience depression, anxiety, PTSD, inability to love, inability to experience love, addiction, rage, violence problems, prison, suicide, whatever, all of that. Or you can go, I accept. I accept my life. I accept that this was my life. I accept the cost. I choose to learn. I choose to love. I choose to remain present to myself. I choose to remain present to life. I choose to remain present to life. I choose to invite life. I choose not to judge life on the behavior of people who themselves were separated from their own life. No one who is present to life and present to self does those kinds of things to a child or to anyone. So when you choose to remain present to life, you're not violating yourself. You're not inviting more abuse. I choose to remain present to life. I choose to remain in communion with self and with others and with beauty and with wisdom and with learning. There are other ways. But if you want joy and peace, there are no other ways. If you want to be present to yourself, if you want to like yourself, there are no other ways. Those are my thoughts for the day. I love you guys. See you next time. Take care.